So I'm here with Paul Jepson, again wanting to talk about sort of impacts of the last 12, 18 months on technology leadership and coping mechanisms that we've all found, and take his points of view and move forward from there. So thanks for joining me, Paul. Appreciated. I suppose just get straight into it. Well, your journey is slightly different because you've come back over from New Zealand after a period of time. I'm sure you can articulate on that. But from your point of view, what was sort of the immediate impact on, or what was the perceived impact on technology leadership because of COVID, and what did we sort of observe behaviourally?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you said, my role over the last sort of 12 months has been quite different to a lot of technology leaders, I guess, finishing a role in New Zealand just before we all went into lockdown, and then I guess struggling to try and relocate back to the UK whilst it was all going on, and find a new role. So that's kind of put a different perspective on it for me. But I think I know leading right up to the lockdown period, the sort of immediate impact was really about trying to lock in the ability to get people to be able to remote work or work from anywhere to sort of keep organizations functioning. And I think sort of, I'd imagine, certainly from my perspective, it was a planned piece of work that had to be expedited like I've never seen before. And I think building those kind of capabilities to react and respond, I think has always been there in a technology function, and particularly technology leadership. But I think this was on a whole new level, certainly for me, and imagine for many technology leaders out there. So being able to organize and manage accordingly remotely, I think has been the biggest, I guess, immediate impact. And I think for people, allowing people the space and time to do things remotely, working from home, and obviously all the other challenges that brings, I think has I guess given us a number of other things to think about as leaders in terms of managing the team and the organization.
Do you think, I suppose, moving on from that, and I agree wholeheartedly, I think what was great to see was I suppose from how many programs of work have we seen around implementing new solutions or rolling out a project. I've had the discussion with many people that normally the transition to remote working or moving everything into the cloud or any example of that normally takes sort of 6-9 months to get through the execs and then be delivered. And it was sort of 48 hours, which was it shows it can be done at pace. But how do you perceive IT leaders to have sort of evolved and overcome the challenges that we did see, probably around sort of the points you made, remote working and leadership and stuff like that? How do you think we've evolved over the last sort of 18 months?
Yeah, I think that the challenges, as I said earlier, that it throws up, is that initial crisis management, and as you say, there's no doubt that when you're up against it, it's amazing what people can get done. Money, time, resources is never an issue when you're under the pump and you've got to get something done really, really quickly. And as I said, many tech leaders, many of my counterparts and colleagues, will have faced something like that, on a much smaller scale, I'm sure. But this, as I said, was a whole new level, I think, for everybody. And certainly from my perspective, I think it's shown people how you can sort of do things and build on this kind of iterative, agile type approach to things, which is get something in, get it in quickly, get it working so that people can use it, and then build, learn and adapt what you've done to fit circumstances. And I think that's what many organizations have benefited from. Yeah. I think it's a capability that's always been there, but I think the risk averse nature of many organizations, particularly when it comes to technology, is what leads to, I guess, these kind of sustained programs where it takes 18 months, 2 years to get anything done. But I think, hopefully that's a thing of the past. And people will have, I guess at board and executive level will start to see that test and learn actually can deliver great outcomes for organizations. So, I think trusting the tech guys and the tech leaders to try something new, adapt and learn, I think has been a big way of overcoming the challenges that have been, everyone's had to face. But, from a technological point of view, I think I was blown away about 18 months before it all happened with what Microsoft have done with their platforms. And, and I've been a Microsoft advocate for probably, 5 or 6 years, but I think they've gone through a particular evolution that's allowed the whole sort of suite around 365 and the cloud. It's just so easy now to adapt and adopt those kind of capabilities that, I'd encourage anyone that doesn't understand or know that to sort of really get across it, because I think that's again a toolkit that's really useful to any organization, and it's a modular approach. Buy what you need. And I think that's been a big, I think I look around many organizations that I've been in touch with in the last sort of particularly 6 months or so, that they're all looking to use some part of Microsoft somewhere, and I think that shows what they've gone. So I think thank God they were on that trajectory before the pandemic hit. That's all I can say, because it might have been a very different horizon we were looking at.
I think that there's a point in there, especially around iteration, that is quite pertinent for me at the moment. Just reading something at the moment that's around positives around failing, and success is built out of a number of failures, and we're always looking for that. I don't know, that ideological solution sometimes, but the iterative way does give us like the growth path to succeed, and it really resonates with myself. Are there any other tools that you think almost became essential for leaders specifically, rather than just sort of the wider community, or do you think that would sort of be looped into the Microsoft conversation?
I think there's been many out there. As I said, Microsoft, I think, has been the spine for many big organizations, but you can't overlook the success that Zoom's had either. I remember I've probably been using Zoom at a local sort of private level maybe for about a year before the pandemic, and talked to a number of the sort of relationship managers, and I know their business has just exploded. And the fact that they've been able to sustain the demand and evolve their product, keep people and the demand all over the globe, because it wasn't just about business, it was about, I know because we were running, across the globe, we were running family quizzes every weekend to try and keep everybody, energized and find a way to connect and have fun. And that was done, over a license, a professional license I bought for me to use for the family. And, I'm sure that's a story that goes through millions of families that have all done something similar to stay in touch, stay connected, and try and get through what's been a really difficult time. So, I think other, collaboration tools have been the key, I think, over the last year. Obviously, Google have got a whole package of things like Hangouts and Zoom. I think, staying connected, using video and voice technology, I think has been critical to, I think just humans continuing to function. We were used to being able to jump on planes and trains or get in the car and go and do something down the road, which has not been possible. So, connecting has been important. And I think the tools that have allowed us to do that, I think have all been great. One can always find fault in things, but I think they've continued to evolve, and they've, people will say, well, I don't know, I think there was issues with Zoom being insecure at some point and people not using it for certain things, but I think that quickly went away thanks to the efforts they put in. So, I think it's, testament to all of that, which, again, not a new concept by any means, but to the scale and the way the uptake that happened, I think more, organizations and at home, in the home office and even in the living room, I think has been a phenomenal increase in demand. But the technology has stood up to it. I think genuinely the odd we learn about, Wi-Fi and broadband and all of that, which is critical to getting us through. But I think generally, apart from a few scuffs and scrapes, I think the whole technology world has really held up and got people through.
Great. I think the biggest challenge now is which collaboration tool you use. It's you're setting up a meeting and it's like, do you want to do a Zoom or a Teams or a Hangouts and WhatsApp call? It's almost, that's the biggest challenge I think that you see now, is which tool to use. But yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
No, I know it doesn't. It doesn't. And what do you think sort of was the biggest lesson that we will have learned through the last 18 months?
I think there's a couple in there for me. One would be around being ready for anything. And I know I've worked in many organizations where we've tested disaster recovery plans. We've kind of done business continuity planning to some kind of level. And we've had a number of different approaches. And one of the organizations I worked with before I left New Zealand, in the natural disaster space, we were very much looking at planning for these kind of events, really, but we were so far behind the thinking and the sort of testing, if you like, of that we were never really sure that we were going to be ready for the next big event. And when it came, we had to be ready like everyone else. But ultimately, I think learning to sort of test for the worst case scenario, making sure things that work, taking time as a business to make sure that everyone understands what's needed, how to behave, how to act, I think will all make that less painful for people. So I think that's really, really important thing to be prepared, because there's always going to be things in life that challenge, whether it's an economic hit or a pandemic or where I came from recently, it was about earthquakes and natural disasters. So the world over has many different challenges. I think the other thing for me is I think revelation. I think that there's quite a stigma around remote working or people working from home before this. Certainly as a leader, I've never really had an issue with it, but I know a lot of my colleagues have. Seen it as people not wanting to work or shying off or slacking or blagging a bit of time at home. Not wanting to be in the office, when actually it's proven to be a really effective and efficient way of working. And when you look at it, I guess people that can work in their own environment, they don't have the time commuting. They can spend more time with their family. Take their dogs for the walk. Look after the kids, take them to school. I guess homeschooling was one of the challenges that people with young children would have had to face with all that. But I think even with that, I think it's proven organizations have survived by their workforce being at home. And I'm sure, I've heard stories of organizations that have thrived, really gone on and overachieved in a very difficult environment. But obviously there'll be those many organizations that will have done not so well, but have been sustained really by remote workers. So, I think looking at that as a new way of operating and building that in for the future as part of that, organizational resilience, I think is a really important thing for everyone to learn and look at, I believe. And I'm sure there's ways we can do it better than we've done it this year. And I'm sure we'll find out what they are and build on them.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? I think I've always believed that nuance of home and office balance. It all comes down to trust, and it is sometimes poor leadership that then it just builds in mistrust. And I think it's just been a leadership challenge more than a wider problem, in my opinion. But it's I totally agree. Like everybody realised that this can work from anywhere, but definitely we can in our industry, that's for sure. And but I think we're now seeing that evolution where, especially there's the younger generation in my industry that have almost started to burn out with the I don't know, it's just like the ferocity of work whilst being at home and not being able to separate the two bubbles. And there's a big clamber for people to be there. There's people in our businesses who will never visit an office again, and maybe once a year, whenever, just intermittently. And there's also some people who want to be there 5 days a week. And I think it's just making sure you can offer an environment that supports both, would be my opinion.
I think absolutely, I agree. The flexibility is what's key in it all. We found that in the last organization I was at recently, where you know, they did a pilot, and the people being piloted were those that had a real need to be in the office for all sorts of reasons, whether that was because their Wi-Fi didn't work particularly well out in the countryside where they lived, and therefore they weren't able to be effective, or whether they had particular needs for support around mental health and things like that. I think everyone is different, and that's why you need flexible, adaptive working environments, just like you need adaptive leadership. So I think absolutely flexibility is key.
I suppose the last question before we go, if we fast forward 12 months, how will the tech community and the wider business community, how will we continue to evolve to be successful through the rest of 2021? Broad question, I know.
Yeah, I think I've already touched on a couple of these areas. I think one would be what I call resilient operating models. The organizations plan for the worst. I think because we never know when we're going to hit with these sort of things, and being able to expand, contract, flex, and adapt, I think is going to be critical to any organization's way of operating in the future. So I think learning those lessons, looking at how your organization can change and adapt, and start and build that into your thinking so that you've got that flexibility built in. Don't wait for the next crisis to address the problems that you've got. I think that's something that 12 months from now, I think every organization needs to have learned some lessons and built some things that are different from where they were at the start. Particularly in terms of capability and the way that they respond to things. And I think that leads on to that BCP angle, as I said earlier, that we're able to test for scenarios and build a better testing capability. We can do it more quickly, more realistically, and we can do that in a way that gives us confidence that we'll be ready in the future. And I think thirdly, as you say, I'm hoping that at a personal level that, certainly from as human beings, less as a leader, but, for me, it's about taking the lessons and I guess the ups and the downs that everyone's had in the last year, and being, I guess, a lot more resilient, being, understanding how you can cope in these kind of circumstances. What are the things that you need? Because everyone's different.
Yeah.
And start to take care of yourself now, and building that resilience into how you function, so that, you can be as resilient in any change that comes along, and then you're able to adapt, learn, adapt, and the technology, I think, will continue to provide massive opportunities for people to adapt and learn and change their businesses and the way that they operate going forward. So I think it's a combination of all those things. I think, but I think we will. I mean, technology has been on some sort of a crazy trajectory for some years, and I think this will only expedite that, given what we've all been through, because nobody really wants to have suffered like we have in the last 18 months or so. And some it'll be longer, and hopefully we can start to see the end of this. But yeah, hopefully 12 months from now we'll be in a much better place.
Fingers crossed. Well, thank you for your time, Paul. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.